Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers. Michael Kilpatrick here with another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And today my guests are Kat and Kolin, who own and operate Starry Ridge Farm, a regenerative hillside farm in northern New York. In addition to producing vegetables, flowers, maple syrup, and pastured livestock, they are dedicated to building community through events and their soon-to-be open farm store. Kat and Kolin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So give us a general idea of where are you located, because northern New York is a very large place.
Yeah, it definitely is. So we're right on the tri-state of Vermont, Massachusetts, and New York. Mm-hmm. We're a town in New York, and a little town called Petersburg. So that's where we are. We're in the Taconic Valley, which runs right up to the Green Mountains and comes up from the Catskills and stuff.
Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, that's right around Route 22A. And if you're going down the edge of New York into Massachusetts, you'd be on that, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we're right on Route 22. That's where our farm store is going to be.
Okay, then I've driven by there many times.
Cool.
Long time ago, but definitely did. All right. So talk to us. How did the farm develop?
So my dad, Michael Buzerak, bought this property in 1976, and shortly after met my mother, and then they got married and moved up here in 1983 is when they officially fully moved up here. They ran a timber framing business for my whole life, and just kind of retired a few years ago, or semi-retired a few years ago. And we always had big gardens, and we'd have chickens, and my parents did a CSA when I was younger for a little while, and then I moved away when I was 20 after I ran the CSA for about a year, and then I moved away and was gone for about 8 years, and then moved back with the dreams of starting it back up.
Very cool. And then Kat, talk about your kind of journey.
Yeah, so I actually, as a kid, my parents' friends owned a vegetable farm about a mile down the road from us. I didn't really have any interest in farming at the time, but I always liked talking to people. And when I think I was just 11, they had me working their little busy farm stand. It's called the tomato stand, but it was kind of a wide array of all different veggies. And I hung out there, and from age like 11 to 22, every summer. And then I went off to college, studied accounting and finance, and worked out in San Francisco, doing kind of more like recruiting for accounting and finance individuals. Then I was kind of just doing a bit more traveling and working in restaurants and not wanting to be in the corporate world. I moved back home, was living on Martha's Vineyard. I grew up on Cape Cod. And then I met Kolin about 6 years ago and came up to the farm for a few days. I was supposed to move back to Australia. I had like a 2-year visa there, but decided to come up here and ended up staying up here and became a farmer.
Very cool. So then with the farm, how do you split the responsibilities?
For the most part, I do all the animal stuff and like all the infrastructure building. We both do everything kind of, but I'm more focused on infrastructure and all that kind of stuff where we're fixing things and building things or whatever we have to do for that. And my younger brother, who owns a piece of property right next to us, he works for us part/full-time, depending on the time of the year and what he's got going on as well. So he and I do that, and then Kat is in charge of pretty much all the logistics for planting schedule and planting things and the nursery and starting up everything. So she does a little bit more of the plant stuff. I do more of the animal and infrastructure stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. And then talk a little bit about the overarching farm layout. I think it's 125 acres.
Yeah. So we've got 125 acres on our main farm. then we purchased the piece of property where our farm store is going to go, which is about 1.5 acres.
Okay.
And we're actually going to be purchasing another piece of property that's 15 acres. And we're going to be kind of getting into that this year. Hopefully we'll be getting the title for that. So the main farm, which is where I grew up and where most of our growing takes place, is it's all on a hillside facing the east. It's quite steep. There's really no flat to any of it unless we make the flat. So
yeah.
it's there's a lot of earthworks that have been done and are still ongoing. So we've got about 1 acre plus of garden beds on the main farm here, and then above us is our sugar bowl, which is where we tap the trees that we have. That everything runs down to our sugar shack, and all of our water systems on our farm are all gravity-fed spring systems. So there's no pumps or anything running that, which is cool and fun, and can be challenging at times for certain things, but it's also really great. Like, we lose power a lot around here, so when the power goes out, all of our water still works no problem. So that's always a nice thing.
Absolutely. So then, yeah, because if you guys go to their Instagram, what's your Instagram again?
Starry Ridge Farm.
Yeah, check out. There's some gorgeous pictures of the farm, but they do show in a couple pictures just how incredibly steep the farm is. So it's amazing what you guys do on that. So the 15 acres that you're purchasing, is that where you'll move your production to?
That 15 acres, there's about a 3-acre field that's quite flat. The fertility isn't great, but it's going to be, at first, it's going to be our, we're going to expand into pastured poultry. So that's going to be the first thing we do over there. We've also got hazelnuts and chestnuts planted over there at the moment. It's family land. It was my grandfather's, and then after he passed away, my mom and my uncle bought out my other aunt and uncle, and they own it. And now we're gonna transfer it into our name and purchase it from them. So so the plan is to do pastured poultry over there, and then the 3 acres is a good flat field, and eventually, ideally, we'll be able to increase production and do some garden beds over there as well.
Okay. And then talk a little bit about the animals. Are they through the woods, or kind of what's your situation for pasturing them?
Yeah, we've got, on the main farm, we've got about maybe 20 plus acres of fields, and none of them are like super great pasture, but they're all open field. But we put them a lot through the woods and through the thicket, and we've got multiflora rows here, which is just awful. But the cows can break it up, and when we do pigs, we put them into the thicket areas and help break everything up. And I actually just purchased a flail mower for my excavator, so that's going to help a lot with expanding field, increasing our pasturability. So that's exciting.
Yeah. So is that kind of mounted on the hoe?
Yeah, on the arm, exactly. Like where the bucket.
On the arm.
So you drop the bucket, and then you attach the flail mower, and it eats. It says it chips up to a 6-inch tree, so I'm going to put that to test.
That should do it. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so then the animals and then vegetables. Talk a little bit about, so your goal is to open a store, but talk about kind of like your current marketing, how's that's been set up.
So I think it's probably set up or split up between, we've kind of been toying with different CSA number levels. So we started out, our first year at like 20 people for our CSA, vegetable CSA. That was back in 2020. We did go up to 50 members the next year, which was great. And then we decided, I don't know if it was last year or this year, we went back down to 30 members. So that we could kind of break more into the retail space in, preparation for our farm store. So, and just having a bigger market share at the market. So we do probably about 25% CSA right now, 60% market, and then that last 15% is between like retail, just direct to consumer with our online shop that we've just sort of started, and to a few, probably about 5 or 6 different local restaurants and farm markets. like little, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the cropping. What's your cropping like?
We focus mostly on kind of the higher dollar, quick turnaround crops. So we do a lot of root crops, and we do a lot of greens, and then we've got a couple high tunnels. So we're doing cucumbers and tomatoes in those, and we haven't really uh, broken into, I don't know, too much more of the larger stuff. We do a lot of brassicas as well because we got really good growing ability for brassicas around here.
But for our CSA, I mean, we do a wide range. I mean, we grow basically everything. We're not doing potatoes this year. We have in the past. Once we get that larger acreage, we probably will. But our CSA gets a wide variety of kind of what you would expect from any typical CSA.
Yes, absolutely. Now, talk a little bit about the water system. So you talked about it being gravity fed. Explain, just kind of like lay that out for us a bit.
Yeah. So water that gets pushed up through the ground and comes out in springs, and we've got a lot of springs that pop up around the farm all over, and some of those we've impounded in ponds, and we've got a couple ponds that we can draw water off of, but our main water systems that come into our house and come out of spigots around the farm, those are all you find the spring and then you'll dig down to bedrock, and then you build a well tile up around that to trap it, and then there's a cistern that overflows into, and then that cistern has the piping coming out of it that goes 4 feet under the ground, because everything's got to be 4 feet deep here, frost protection, and then that's what runs downhill to the houses and stuff.
And they're quite a bit. I mean, how many 100 feet above the?
Yeah, we've got 2 main springs, and the one is probably maybe 60 to 70 feet in elevation above our house, and then our upper spring's probably 110 or so feet above our house. And from the bottom of our property to the top, we've got about 800 feet of vertical rise. Because wow. It starts at 800 feet down at the bottom of our road. Our houses are at about 1,000 feet in elevation, and then the top point of our highest point, which actually is kind of where our sugar bowl is, that's at between 14 and 1,600 feet is the top of the hill. So there's quite a bit of distance to travel and going up and down, and certainly makes it challenging with some things, but with water,
yeah, good pressure.
Yeah, we get great pressure from certain.
I can imagine. Yeah. And so, is it unlimited? Is there plenty of water from the springs? You kind of have to be picky about how much you irrigate at once.
Yeah, we've got to be a little cautious. For the most part, it just takes. Neither of those 2 springs that we have tapped into run dry necessarily. We've never had them go dry, but do slow down significantly in the summer. So if you accidentally leave the irrigation going too long in one of the high tunnels, which we've definitely done a bunch of times, you'll come out and be like, oh yeah, there's no water, but we just shut the system off, and then it refills. It might take a day or two, and then we're back in the water. But we've also got ponds that we do a lot more of our irrigating out of during the summer. Spring and fall, it's usually never an issue for just pulling out of our existing systems, but in the summer we just drop a pipe into the pond and siphon it out of there, and we get the same pressure because one of the ponds is right next to our upper spring, so we get good pressure out of that one.
And we do have a few other fields. One of the 2 other fields are out near our other pond, our larger pond. That's how many gallons of water is that?
The pond? It's a lot, probably over 600,000 gallons of water.
So we run a siphon to our field below there, and then we do the one field right next to our pond. We do have to use a pump when we irrigate that. But we usually put crops out there that don't need as much irrigation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha. Very cool. And I'm assuming it's very clean water then too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the pond's all spring fed, so it's really clean.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really awesome. And then I'm assuming you're doing a mix because of where you're located too. It's not like you have super hot summers probably.
Yeah, it definitely gets hot. It's not crazy. It doesn't. It's not as long as like being even just a little south of here, and we do get a lot of reprieve once we do get weather coming in, and if we get it like it was real hot was it last week?
The
2
past
weeks ago.
few weeks have been
Past few weeks have been in the upper 90s a lot, and then we'll get a quick little rain shower, and if it's not like overnight where it actually can help cool it down, you get like rain in the middle of the day, then the sun comes right back out, and it's like you're in sauna all of a sudden. But
generally it's about 80s in the summer.
Yeah.
It's not crazy.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Let's talk about your tunnels. So you have a couple tunnels. Like, how many square feet is under cover?
So we've got an 18 by 96, which is where our cucumbers are in right now, and then we've got a 30-foot by 96-foot, which is what our tomatoes and our ginger are both in right now. And then we've got some smaller. We've got like a smaller like a propagation greenhouse with a wood stove in it for like the early season for starting stuff out, and then we've got we've got like another small tunnel that we use occasionally or start early stuff in. But that's all we've got for right now. But we've also got the 130 by 96 foot tunnel was through the NRCS, and we've got them coming out to look at our farm store property to hopefully get another tunnel down there for next year. So that helped out a lot.
Cool. Yeah. Let's talk about that farm store that you mentioned. That how big are you planning on building? Is that going to be from the ground up? Are you retrofitting or?
Yeah, we bought that property, and it's got a house on it with a few small barns outside.
Okay.
So we're just using the nicest of the barns, and we're going to fix that up and build the farm store in there. And it's kind of rudimentary right now, and that's where we do our CSA pickups. It's a lot easier than having people come up to the farm here. And it's right on, like we were saying, it's right on Route 22, so it's super easy access. It's actually flat down there because it's in the valley, so that helps out a lot.
Yeah.
And we do have about 3/4 of an acre of growing ground down there that we've got about half of that filled right now with our fall crops. So, yeah.
Very cool.
And so then the farm store, you said you're still building that. When do you envision opening that?
Yeah, we're like working on it. We do our CSA pickups in it right now, and we're actually working on the other barns first, like this season. Basically, all of them have to get jacked up and new foundations poured built underneath them. So that's what we're kind of in the middle of doing right now. My parents, like I was saying, had a timber framing business, so I grew up doing a lot of carpentry work, and I actually have a carpentry and excavation business as well that we do a lot of work off the farm with as well. So we're doing all of the work to the barns to get them there. So right now we've got one barn that's up in the air, and we're going to start digging around and breaking out the concrete that is there, which is just kind of like a rat slab kind of thing and nothing special. And then we're going to dig down, do a frost wall, pour a new slab in there, and the first barn is going to be where our walk-in coolers are going to go, and then the other barn's kind of just like a carriage barn, so we're just going to sturdy that one up, and then ideally over the winter or early next spring we'll be able to jack up the farm store barn and then redo that foundation and have that ready for next year.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it's a bit of a work to make this all
happen. Oh yeah, definitely.
But as of right now, the store actually, or the building that the store will be in, is actually not bad. You know, people come in, they're like, "Oh, you did it." We're like, "No. There's still more work to be done." But we cleaned it out really nicely, and it's pretty spacious. It's 18 by 24.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's good for right now. We are doing our online shop orders during the CSI pickup. So people are coming to get their either pork or maple syrup or flowers, eggs, or veggie boxes, which is generally just what a CSA share is.
Yes. Yeah. You will find that's the first day you move in, it'll be already too small.
Yeah.
That's what we've that's what we found. But it is what it is. So Yeah, you do what you can. But yeah, we have about 600 square feet, and we were in today talking about stuff, and just like it's just not big enough.
Yeah.
We have so many more things. Are you tired of guessing how to price your farm fresh produce? Stop second guessing and start maximizing your profits with our vegetable pricing guide and calculator. With our guide and calculator, pricing your produce becomes clear and simple. What we provide is some detailed charts of what different prices across the country and what the current prices are. We give you the ability to put in your production costs and some overhead costs and calculate where you should be in the range, and kind of helps you set your prices based on that and your desired profit margins. So don't let uncertainty dictate your pricing strategy. Join countless farmers who've transformed their pricing game with the vegetable pricing guide. Visit us now at growingfarmers.com/veggie guide to take control of your profitability. Don't wait. Start pricing smarter today. So talk to me a little bit about the kind of like who your customer is. Do you have do you know like there's a specific demographic that shops with you, or is it just more of people that are from the local area?
Yeah, it's a lot of the local folks around here. It's actually some of the CSA members were actually CSA members when my parents had the CSA in 1994, and just kind of joined every time. So we've got a pretty cool, tight knit community with the CSA, and then the veggie boxes. We've been reaching out a little bit more with just like the younger crowd around the area.
And some people from the market as well. So we go to the Williamstown Farmers Market, which is it borders, it's the most western town, or northwestern town in Massachusetts. So we border that town. It's about 20 minutes from our farm. That's where we do our Saturday markets. And we just have a little QR code for joining our weekly newsletter at the market. And a lot of people have been joining, and they're like, oh, I'm going to be gone this weekend, but I really want to get veggies from you guys. And then they'll come and grab a veggie box over in Petersburg on Wednesday. But in general, I feel like around here in Petersburg, it is a bit of an older crowd.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're a little bit less, they're a little apprehensive about, or some of them have been, about the online shop. They're like, can we just leave you cash? And we're like, yeah, it's totally great,
Yeah.
But so there's, pros and cons to all of it, but it's definitely helping us branch out a bit.
Yeah, we definitely have a demographic that doesn't want to give a credit card number, even though it's Shopify, something that's very secure.
Right.
So they want to pay with cash in the store.
Yeah.
So
which we also like. We're definitely not opposed to cash.
Yes. Yeah. I wish more of our customers were about 85% card and then 15% cash, which I would like to see way more, just because of the fees add up.
Sure. Oh,
they do. And it's absolutely a cost of doing business, but when you see the end of the year and you're like $5,000-$6,000 in fees, you're like, I could have done something with that money.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we even see that one because we've got a card reader and everything for over at the market, and I'd say like a third of our sales are on card over at the market, so it's still pretty cash heavy, which is great. But you look at it at the end of the day, and you're like, oh, we made this, and you're like, oh, but we also lost $18 or $25, or you know what I mean, or whatever. It's like, but like you said, it's so handy, and it is so useful that it's hard to, it's worth it for sure, but it also weighs on you a little bit.
Yeah, there are a couple markets around here that do charge a credit premium, and we've resisted so far, but we have thought about it.
Yeah. We have something that's called the market bucks, that you go to the market manager's booth, and you can get cash, basically, little cards, especially because there's a lot of vendors that don't use Square or
Swipe. Yeah. So then at the farmer's market, do you pretty much offer a full range of your products? Do you specialize in anything at the market?
Pretty much full range. We do tend to, like Colin was saying earlier, like the baby roots, like hawkeye turnips, radishes, beets, carrots. We call the hawkeye turnips candy turnips at the market, and it's been a big hit. We try to bring those every week. People message us on Facebook about them. I mean, they love them. And lots of lettuce. We've found, for whatever reason, when we do, there's a big salad mix guy at the market. He's one of our friends, and he got us into the market. So he's primarily the salad mix guy. Not to say we wouldn't do it, but we have really nice head lettuce, and we were putting it out just as heads, and then it wasn't selling insanely well at first, and then we just threw 2 heads in a bag and it went in 30 minutes. So now we've just been putting two heads in a bag and selling all our lettuce.
Oh, and what's your pricing on that?
So 2 heads, 2 small, medium heads is it's $5 or $6. So
okay,
it's around a little less than a pound.
Interesting. Okay, and so then, why do you think it was that's what changed the selling for you for going putting it into the bag?
I don't know.
I don't know. The customer just seems to want it in a bag, and even though most of these customers are super anti-plastic, which not that it's not like we want to use plastic either, but
yes.
But yeah, for whatever reason, it's easy for them. I think the head stays a bit more fresh for when they get home. They're used to it at the store, so we're just trying to make it work with that.
Yeah, no, I mean whatever it takes, but it's always just interesting of why that one thing caused that change.
Yeah, I don't know, and it was literally like we were looking at. We had these beautiful romaine this one day, and I was like, I cannot believe these things aren't selling, and then well, let's just stick them in a bag. I was like, and we had done that with something else. It was something else that was in a bag,
and then people grab it and they're like, oh, romaine.
Yeah,
I'm like, all right,
what is happening? So
so the market, if it doesn't sell, bag it.
It worked just fine for us.
And we generally do almost sell out each week. Usually, it seems like we've been bringing a good amount of stuff where we don't have an insane amount, but we do have a market in Bennington, Vermont, or a store market that we're pretty good friends with the manager, and I can text her at 1 hour before the market's ending, and I see that we have 40 cabbages left, and I'm like, hey Sarah, would you want a bunch of cabbage for your deli or for the storefront? Yeah. So we can offload a bunch to her too, which is cool.
And then you give her a better price deal or something like that?
Yeah, we'll give her a little bit of a wholesale price, depending on if she's just buying 6 of something, we maybe won't. But if they're going to buy a bit more, then we'll give her, $1 off of something or.
Absolutely. Very cool. Talk a little bit about the team. So you have a pretty small team. How did you find them, and kind of how do you split up the work for them?
So it's Colin and I every day. And then his brother Dave is with us about 4 to 5 days a week, depending. And then we do have a part-time employee who's here 2 days a week. And we've kind of been toying with the hours with her. So that's kind of what it is now. We, in the future, once we have the store going a bit more, we're hopefully going to be having more 2 to 3 full-time employees.
Gotcha. And then do they do more of the day-to-day, or do you guys all just split it all equally?
Usually we just tackle bigger projects with them, or weeding. We'll all go out and weed something big, or the one girl that comes just a couple days a week. She's she loves wire
weeding. She loves the collinear hoe and the wire weeder, never sink tools, and she's great. She's only 15. She's amazing. And she's one of our neighbors as well. So she has experience working on another farm for about a year already, a larger farm.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then with my brother, he and I mainly focus on the bigger jobs where it's all right, we always end up getting pulled away from just farm tasks to do also house maintenance, or the roof on a house, or one of our houses, or whatever. There's a million things that we have to do all the time. So he and I usually tackle that kind of stuff, or bigger fencing projects, or off farm work, like I was saying. This, actually, we did a tree job this morning, and we're going to set up because I've got a guy in town here that needs his barn, some work done on his barn, so we're gonna do that. So we're kind of always all over the place with work. So
but Dave will also come over, and we'll get a big lots of bed flipping down, laying compost when it's Dave, Colin, and I. Bed flipping is usually where Dave's really good. Especially because we're pushing these wheelbarrows of compost uphill, so it's an intense thing to ask someone to do. But yeah, and we do have a lot of people in town that we in the beginning were a little bit apprehensive about having, volunteers out, and there's all these rules, um, and sometimes it's more work than you think to have volunteers. But this year, especially down at our farm store property where it's easier to get to, it's super flat, less like banks to fall down, between each.
Yes.
And just uneven ground. Anyway, we've had so many awesome volunteers, especially young kids in like middle school and high school that really, really want to come out and learn. And they've been amazing. We had one 13-year-old like baseball player, one of our veggie box customers, her son, she's like, can you get him to work? So he came out for 4 hours on like an 88-degree day and was multi with wood chips. He was awesome. So yeah, it's been really good.
Okay, gotcha. Talk a little bit about your kind of growing practices. You talked about bed flips, so kind of like what would you say to yourself? Low till, no till?
Yeah, we're low till. We're pretty much no till in most of our established beds.
Okay.
And then we're low till because we don't really do. So all of our beds we've standardized everything to 40 foot or 45 foot long, 2.5 foot wide, like the classic 30-inch wide market garden bed. But we did everything 45 feet as opposed to 100 feet mostly because we don't have a 100-foot straight stretch really anywhere. So and then it's for us, for our scale, it just seems easier to have the smaller beds because we don't need 100 feet of carrots. We can just do the 2 beds, and then you can cut the row cover down, and it's only you do a 50-foot section of row cover, and it fits perfectly over the bed, or 50-foot long tarps as opposed to 100-foot long tarps. They get a little bit heavy after a while. So,
and it is nice to have that extra 2.5 feet on either side to do the little like ponytail of the row cover at the end, and have the extra for the pathways. All our pathways between each section of beds is 2.5 feet.
Yeah.
So it works out.
Yeah, and
especially for cutting down like a 300-foot piece of landscape fabric for crops we do use landscape fabric for. We're not wasting any. They're all in 50 foot.
As far as our growing practices, we're 100% organic. We're not certified organic, but we use everything we buy in is organic, and we basically
don't use any sort of like synthetic organic.
Yeah, we don't use any organic pesticides or sprays or anything, and we're just focused on soil health as much as possible. And we do make our own compost now. We used to buy in a lot of compost, as a lot of people do, but with the animals, I just do a deep bedding in the barn over the winter, and then I pull it out, and like 2 years later, we've got really great compost. So that's kind of where we're at now, because we did buy in a lot of compost, and it was just like it would vary in quality so much, and there'd be trash in it, and it's just like a whole thing. So we got kind of fed up with that, and we're able to make it happen on our own, which has been great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then with that, making that, you used your excavator to flip that, or?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So I'll just pull it all out around this time of the year, after all the animals have been through it and everybody's back out on pasture, the pigs go into the butcher or whatever. So we just pull it out and do big windrows, or big piles. Really, we don't really have a long enough stretch to do good windrows, but yeah, I just do that and then flip it, and I'll flip it a couple times a year usually, and as best as we can. And then we've also got like a smaller compost pile that gets a lot more of our garden waste that goes into it. So that's kind of our finer compost. It kind of breaks down nicer. It's a little bit higher nutrients. And then I add in a lot of our, like the barn compost. I'll add that in. And then the barn compost is like the mass of stuff that we're putting on. And then the nicer compost is what we'll like side dress with, or put right in the row where we're going to be planting something, or try for like our direct seeded crops, because it's a little bit finer. There's not as many chunks of wood chips or like old clumps of hay or whatever that end up in there. So that's kind of what we've been doing.
Awesome. What kind of like nutrients do you have to add? Like, are you adding any additional nutrients, and kind of what mix is that?
Yeah, we basically just do like a light application of like Pro Start and Pro Grow from North Country Organics, I think. So that's pretty much all we do. We are going to start buying in a little bit more like feather meal and bone meal and stuff like that to add. But
Okay.
for the most part, we don't add a ton of really anything. And we've had good results. We really have been pretty bad about getting any soil testing done or looking into the analytics behind that and focusing on that. But we haven't really had any glaring issues either. So um, that's kind of what we've been doing
Yeah,
so
the
far.
only
It's
thing
worked.
we kind of noticed was getting a little bit of the case of the yellow shoulders on some of our tomatoes, which we realized was a little bit of a calcium magnesium deficiency. So, which is why we're looking more into adding some bone meal and feather.
Gotcha. Okay. What do you think the future holds for you guys on the farm? Kind of like, what's your long range vision?
Well, it changes day to day, right? um, for the most part, we really want to get the farm store up and running, increase our production, be able to hire on more people, and kind of my dream. And we'll see where we get to. But I'd like to start leasing, if not purchasing, more land down in the valley so that we can like dramatically increase our production and be able to do multiple acres of the bigger crops, and then also and be able to offer that, as well as also having the opportunity to bring our prices down a little bit where we can uh, kind of market to more of the local people around here where they're not kind of taken aback by some of the prices that we have to charge for certain things just because of the scale. Like we can't do potatoes and make it make sense if we're selling them for whatever price when we have to go hand dig them and do the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, being able to increase production in that way would be really great. And we're hoping that we'll be able to do that in the next few years. I've kind of got 10 acres potentially lined up, maybe not for next year, but the year after for sure. And that would kind of be the start into that.
And it's right next to the farm store, basically.
Yeah, it's like not even like a mile and a half down the road, so it's pretty perfect.
Gotcha. Yeah. There is that aspect of, what is the appropriate scale and how does that affect pricing?
Yeah.
There is the aspect, though, as you do scale, you end up bringing in more equipment. So there is that overhead cost, which rises with it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it can be, it is. I mean, it definitely is. I think there's certain levels you have to get to. So there's a certain very small level where everything's done by hand that works. And then you kind of have to jump up to this next certain level, which allows you to capitalize the different amount of infrastructure and the tractors and the harvesters and the planters and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
you're right. You need to get to that next scale. And I don't really have an exact of where that is because I think it changes for every single farm,
Right.
but it's definitely there.
Yeah, and we're at like that really awkward scale where it's like we're really starting to get enough ground in production where we either need to be able to hire more people or do more stuff mechanically, and like but it's at such like a weird scale where it's like we're none of it's like all of it makes sense because it's obviously working for us, but like all of it's also like kind of weird, and like you're always like, wow, it would be a lot easier to do this mechanically as opposed to by hand, but we can't really get anything mechanical onto some of our growing ground areas, which again is why
Correct.
I like to lease more land and do more flat stuff, because then I could do a little bit more tractor sitting as opposed to pushing wheelbarrows
Yeah.
down hills.
Yes, and eating more food because you need the energy to push the wheelbarrow up the hill.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we'll
Yeah.
be getting older.
Yeah. All right. That's awesome. What kind of advice would you give a new beginning farmer?
Well, don't give up too soon because it's pretty tough. And getting started is always like it's so daunting. Like the list of tasks ahead it's like you look at it and you're like, how would we ever be able to do all this? But yeah, I'd say keep with it and really focus on kind of that scale that you want to get to, like that first level you want to get to, and figure out how that's going to work. It's a tough thing to be able to do, to like, I don't know, keep the motivation for it. And especially this time of year, we're all pretty tired at this point of the year. It's like we've all been pushing since at least April, but really March. You know what I mean? By March, you're like, things are going, we're starting everything, and by July, you're like, holy smokes, I can't believe there's still 3 more months of the market left. It's like, how are we going to get through that?
I would also add, I think a big thing, I think our first year, I didn't know too many people up here in Kolin, had a good amount of family, friends, and just friends from growing up here. But I think really focusing on your community and not being so heads down in the fields, and meeting people and doing things for your community is so important. We've realized that. We started what's called the Petersburg Harvest Festival 5 years ago, where we have a few other farms and bluegrass music all day and food trucks and other like a mushroom guy, and it's like a big glorified farmers market with local beer and cider, and it's great. And we kind of have these built-in relationships, actual friends now, with all those vendors, and just our CSA members have just been so supportive, and some of them have owned farms in the past and have given us anything, irrigation, everything. So I think just really tapping into your community in the beginning is super important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the festival, talk a little bit about that, because I know you actually mentioned that earlier. You run that once a year? Is it a couple days, 1 day long?
Yep. Yeah, just 1 day. Usually like the last weekend in September is when we shoot for. Okay. And it's great. It kind of all started out, actually, Kat was still living down on Martha's Vineyard at the time. After moving up here originally, she went back down for the summer to work down there. And I was talking to the librarian in town, and somehow it just came up. Like, she's like, oh, like what could we do for community outreach for the farm and like for farmers in the area? She was really cool and progressive in that way. And I was just like, oh, well, we should do like a little harvest festival or something. And we didn't really expect much from it, but the first is like, we put in enough work to get the bands and get some food trucks and get a few vendors and get a local. There's one of our really good friends. He makes hard cider, and he's a super cool guy. And then we got a local beer, a local brewer that came as well. So, and we were like, I was kind of like, I wonder what this is going to turn out like, because we're in a pretty rural and like not so, there's just not many people around, and also people kind of stay to themselves, and I wasn't really sure how it was going to turn out, but it turned out great. Like,
yeah, we had like 450 people. There's nothing in our town. I mean, there's just the town library and post office, and that's where our festival is. But there's no store, no stoplight, nothing.
Yeah.
So I guess there wasn't much else to do, but
nothing was pulling anybody away from it. So, but we also didn't expect there to be that much positive feedback from it either. I mean, there was hundreds of people there basically all day. Like, people came and then stuck around the entire day, like a lot of them. And we got to see, I got to see people I hadn't seen in 10, 15 years. And and that was like the talk of the town, and everybody brought it up every time we'd see them. So we're like, well, we got to do it again next year. So we've just been rocking and rolling with it, and people love it. Everybody always asks about it. It's gotten a little bit bigger. We've pretty much maxed out the space that we have for it. But yeah, you'll see cars lined right up along the side of the road, and we've got a church that's right up the road with a little path that runs right down to where it is. So a lot of people park up there, which is great. But yeah, it's super fun. It's the most fun thing that happens in town for sure.
Yeah, it's a little less planning now. Things have been we have almost all the same vendors, and it's actually 2 weeks after our wedding this year, so that will be interesting. But it'll be a chill wedding.
Yes, sounds like you got a lot going on this year then.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you both for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate your time. And it was great to meet you and kind of learn about what you guys are doing and the awesome impact you're making in your community.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.